Well, to examine the impact of Morsi's presidency on Egyptian foreign policy, we're joined now by Rachel Shabi, who is a journalist and Middle East analyst. Thank you so much for joining us here on Al Jazeera. In Morsi's acceptance speech on Sunday night, he said that Egypt wouldn't interfere in the internal affairs of other countries, that they wouldn't tolerate interference themselves, that they'd respect peace treaties. I mean, in light of that, do you think the international community should be reassured that Egypt is going to be a tranquil force in the region?
For now, I think there's two good reasons to assume that that's the case. The first one is that the Muslim Brotherhood, since the revolution, has kind of shown itself to be an organization that is quite establishment in the sense that, you know, it has a very pro-West neoliberal economic policy. It also has a pro-West foreign policy. Primarily, it has said again and again that it doesn't want to trash the peace treaty with Israel. So that's one reason. And the other reason is that whatever members of the Muslim Brotherhood might say, actually, it's still SCAF, the military rulers that have all the power in Egypt. And in the last few weeks, they've done the constitutional equivalent. They've seized so much power. They've done the equivalent of sending out a memo saying, oh, by the way, we're in charge pretty much of everything, including foreign policy, meaning that SCAF has the ultimate say over foreign policy and not the president. So I think those are two good reasons to assume that nothing significant is going to change in terms of Egypt and regional policy.
What about Iran, though? Because he did make some pretty strong overtures to Iran in the past few months.
I mean, the relationship between Iran and Egypt has changed since the revolution. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens between those two countries. I mean, they haven't exactly been great friends or had much to do with each other since 1979, the year of the Iranian Revolution and the year when Egypt signed that peace treaty with Israel. And they obviously still have a lot of things that they disagree on. Primarily at the moment, Syria. I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt is definitely not a friend of the Bashar al-Assad regime there. But it would be interesting, wouldn't it, if a major power like Egypt did say, you know what, we're not going to hate Iran just because everybody tells us to. Actually, we think it might be regionally more significant and more strategic to form an alliance with Iran. That could be quite a major shake-up in the region.
You mentioned how still obviously divided the military is from the new president. We still don't know what powers exactly he'll have. And the military, if I'm not wrong, is still receiving military aid from the US to the tune of billions of dollars. Do you think that in the future foreign policy of the country it'll be more ideological or more of a consideration to the economic situation of the country?
Well, that's the big question, to what extent Egypt will still acquiesce to Western agenda in the Middle East. And we've seen the consequences of that in the past. The fact that for the past 3 decades, the former regime has been so compliant with Western agenda in the region has meant, for instance, it's had an impact on Palestinians who in Gaza have for 5 years suffered an Israeli blockade, which Egypt has helped to impose. We've also had a situation where Israel has been able to go to war in Lebanon in 2006 or go an assault in Gaza in 2009. And it has done that knowing that Egypt will not do anything with that, i.e. that the Egyptian border will remain quiet. Now, obviously, if that is no longer the case, if Israel cannot take that for granted, that is going to be a major change in the region.
Rachel Shabi, Middle East journalist and analyst, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.